Hey, thank you, everybody. 43 people, not bad for a impromptu AMA. We wanted to make sure that we're properly communicating what the strategy is, how we came to the conclusion that we did. Open up the floor. I view this as kind of a conversation with you guys because I think fundamentally what it comes down to is maybe misconceptions and kind of people making assumptions one way or the other. And when I started, and for those of you that don't know me, I started at the company as the CMO just about 3 months ago now, 2 or 3 months ago. And one of the things that I'm tasked with as a CMO is to make sure that we're properly communicating the status of the project, just things about the project in general, back to you guys as kind of early players and investors in the project, making sure that we're in lockstep and that there aren't a lot of surprises. So the project that you guys put your faith into matches the project that we as a team have put our faith into, and that we're properly communicating that. My title is the CMO, but I have 20 years experience in the games industry and have worn a lot of different hats. I've been a producer, a CEO, biz dev, you name it. So while this communication is one piece of what I'm tasked with, another one is to think about how we're pricing the project and how we're bringing in new users and existing users so that we can reach our goal. And our goal is obviously to be a huge multi-billion-dollar company and follow the suit of those that came before us, bringing fantasy to blockchain, fantasy sports to blockchain. So when we think about what this latest change was, and I don't know necessarily was in our perspective that we're viewing it so much as a change as being a defining of a clarification of ambiguity. So when we start a project like this, we know that we're breaking new ground. There hasn't been another project quite the same that we are. We're also a byproduct of the times. We know when this project was kicked off, it was a very different space as far as blockchain and Web3. And now here we are. So some of the decisions and product decisions that were made at the onset of the project aren't quite as viable as they once were. And one of those things is the tie of how unrevealed Series 1 racehorses are going to incorporate with the Genesis Avatar drop. Knowing that the initial onset of the project, the plan was that there would be 10,000 Genesis Avatars. Those would sell out quickly, and then those would have an allocation of one Series 1 racehorse tied to each one. And it was a way to guarantee that every season, at the beginning of the season, our Genesis Avatar holders would be able to unlock one unrevealed horse and have first crack at those horses. The situation, of course, is where we are now, where we have the 12/31 date is fast approaching. We're going to have some leftover horses. So I think this is where the disconnect potentially came from. So I think the assumption, at least internally with the project, was, okay, any remaining horses, we're going to take them, we'll reveal them, and we'll put them up on OpenSea, and whoever wants to buy them will buy them. And what the change was to say, let's not do that. We know our community likes to have the option of revealing horses because you have the chance of getting an astronomically great horse at a discounted price rather than letting the market price to decide it. And let's throw in there that the only way that you can get those is by having a Genesis Avatar. So it adds a little bit more utility to the Genesis Avatar. Because if we opened it up and we put them all up on OpenSea, anybody could buy them. Literally anybody that's not associated with the project would be able to come in and bid on those horses and bid on the best horses and drive those horse prices up. So the way that we had thought about it was, okay, let's add some additional utility. We know that this season is going to be different than future seasons. Future seasons, we want to stand by everybody. For every single Genesis Avatar, you're guaranteed the ability to mint one of those Series 1 racehorses of that season. And this happens in perpetuity. And I don't think that a lot of people are really understanding the true value that represents and the long-term value that represents. So I get the frustration of people that bought multiple avatars with the intention of being like, I want to buy 10 Genesis Avatars because I want to be able to unlock, to be able to purchase and mint 10 unrevealed racehorses in the Series 1. And now for those users, for sure, yes, this change means that you could have bought one and still gone and bought 10 more. That is just something that we had to adjust to, kind of given where we are with the project and where we are with the market. So I feel for those people. I get that. I understand that argument. I would say that's a short-term argument still. Say that next season, the season after that, the season after that, all of those are going to be wildly valuable. I view Genesis avatars as a long-term investment in the project. I view horses as an investment for the fun of the game. So that goes to the other point, which I think is maybe a philosophical difference of the way some people in the community are seeing the project versus others. I think some people are viewing the project more as an NFT project, as in it's a supply and demand thing, and the value of your horse and the value of your assets is directly correlated to the rarity or the scarcity of those assets. And then the other people are viewing it as like, no, this is a fantasy game. The value of a horse isn't that it's one of 5,000 horses. The value of the horse is the planned revenue and earnings of that horse in its career as a real life thoroughbred horse that's racing. And I think that there's a difference there too. So I think it's really important when the way that the team is viewing it. We're viewing this as this is a blockchain game, but it's fundamentally a fantasy game at its core. The value of horses is directly tied to the earnings of the real life counterpart of that horse. It's not somebody else owning a different horse doesn't really affect you. So if we didn't, as in whether your horse races and comes in second to another horse, whether somebody else owns that horse is irrelevant to how much money that you won. What we'd like to do is to make sure that somebody does own that horse. We want to make sure that we're giving out winnings that correlate to the real world counterpart as much as we possibly can. So there's been some conjecture too about whether we made this change as a means to bring in short-term revenue. To be clear, that's not the case at all. Like, it's not the case. We're not trying to drum up additional revenue just by doing this thing. What we're trying to do, what the core purpose of this decision was actually to provide additional utility for Genesis holders and to allow people that wanted to continue to buy unrevealed horses the ability to do that. And people that want to buy revealed horses, we're going to kick up the auctions that we started before. We started the auctions, things got a little hectic and we stepped away from it for a little bit, but we're going to come back and we're going to start doing those auctions again with the new year. So if you prefer to let the market price decide and buy revealed horses at a market price, you'll have that option. You'll still have that option too if you're not even a Genesis avatar holder to make those purchases, but that's kind of the nature of having a third-party market that exists. So I just wanted to get on with you guys, explain kind of our thought behind the decision that we made, because we've been watching, the whole team's been watching Discord, and we're like, wait, why are people viewing this as being somehow damaging to the project or somehow short-sighted or somehow not respective of the people that went in and invested to the game, when it's completely contrary to what the intention of that decision was. The intention of that decision, again, was to make sure that we had multiple options for our existing community to maintain the value of Genesis avatars, because Genesis avatars, the way that we view them is that you guys are the market makers. Every year there's going to be 10,000 of the best racehorses that come on and get registered in the market. You guys are going to be the ones that are able to buy them. You guys are the ones that are going to be able to price those in the secondary market, to fractionalize them and sell them off to offset some of your risk, to stable them with your friends, to move them to new stables. You guys are going to be the ones that are going to be able to make those decisions around the biggest assets in the game. So we viewed it as being, what can we do to get past this year and the situation that we're in this year, but at the same time create an actual definition of how we will proceed with this project going forward that can handle both our runaway success as well as the current situation with the slow start. And that was our entire intention behind it. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to make sure that we're properly communicating with you guys, which is one of the reasons why we're doing this quarterly review. I think that there's a lot of questions that you guys have. You guys want to see MVP, you guys want to see OG5K rewards, you guys want to see a bunch of different things, and we want to be able to address that. But we also want to do it in a way that's not super distracting. We're moving 1,000,000 miles a minute. Like, we're really, really hitting hard. We didn't get much of a holiday break. We don't expect to. This is a passion project for all of us, just like it is for you guys. We've all made sacrifices in order to be a part of it. But we're moving fast, and we want to make sure that we're properly balancing the communication that we have to you guys with our ability to be productive and efficient and get things done. And the other thing is just because we're operating in this place of a little bit of ambiguity, we have to figure out and do a better job of saying, these are the things that we know to be true about the project. These are the rules, but at the same time, leaving us a little bit of wiggle room to be able to make some changes so we can be a little bit more dynamic to make decisions that reflect the state of the market and the state of the project, and as well as kind of listen to feedback from you guys and be able to have that room. So we don't like the idea of announcing one thing and then doing another. In this case, I don't think that we ever really clearly defined what would happen when the new year came around and the deadline kind of hit. So we tried to find a solution to make that definition, again, that would work great for this year, and hopefully would be viewed by you guys as being beneficial, and then something that would scale and work well next year and the year after and the year after that. So with all that said, I was hoping to have a conversation with you guys. We've been reading the Discord comments all day today, keeping track of what you guys say. I think that we worry how much of it is a vocal minority and how much people had one perception of the way things would be versus another. So we wanted to be able to get out in front of this in a timely manner and let you guys kind of speak your mind also and answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to raise their hand, we'll call you up.
Anyone?
Hi guys, how are you doing?
What's up?
Good.
Good. I just wanted to weigh in on this decision, and I really appreciate you throwing this together, trying to communicate with us. I really appreciate that. I just want to let you know where I'm coming from my perspective. I know my perspective is not what's always best for the game as a whole, so I get that. But my perspective was I wanted to mint a lot of horses. So I minted about 40 horses, which is a significant investment into the project. As far as I understood, I needed an avatar for each one of those. So I would have preferred just one avatar. I ended up with more than 40 avatars, right? And so now this decision comes around, and had I not done that, I could have just had the one. So the question for me is, how does this bring value to those other 39? Why would I not sell those other 39?
Sure. So I mean the 39 avatars, I assume you mean, because the horses
Yes.
have their own. Okay.
Yeah.
Those. So there's two pieces of that, right? So in the one case, buying those 40 avatars was your only way to really guarantee that you were going to be able to get one of those 40 different Series 1 horses, because they could have sold out. So that's part of it. I'd say that you also were able to get an opportunity to get the best horses before they came out. But more importantly, it's a 40 avatar investment on an appreciating asset that every year is going to be worth more and more money. So again, I view Genesis avatars as more of an investment in the long-term viability of the project, with those things being worth quite a bit more money. For sure, you could have waited if you knew 100% that this is the way that we're going to go down. You could have waited anyway and bought those additional horses on the open market. So I think that the utility was around getting unrevealed, and that's what I led with. Like, to me, this decision, that was the one negative drawback that we kind of saw. Is like, those people that did, like yourself, that really invested in the project early around that, they could have, if their desire was to have 40 horses and not 40 avatars, waiting would have been a better scenario for you. And had we known, we would have probably changed the way that we kind of approached that. That said, I think that you're way better off holding those, but I believe in the project. I'm super bullish in that. I think avatars are wildly underpriced and undervalued right now. And I think that that's going to be the case. So I do understand where you're coming from. Again, I think you're probably in the minority, and thanks for the support. That's a huge amount of investment and interest in the project, and truly do appreciate it. But for sure, in that circumstance, the way things panned out wasn't the best kind of solution. But again, I think next year it's going to be hugely valuable. In that even if you don't want to mint 40 horses, being able to just take the delivery passes and sell them to somebody else that does is going to be hugely valuable.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing I think that to me could almost save it if the getting those horses a little bit cheaper and then getting those mint passes and being able to sell that for a profit on the secondary market, then I think that does retain some value of that avatar at that point.
Yeah. And those are the kinds of solutions that we'd love to hear about, and we'll definitely take into consideration. So yeah, I think it's a fine balance too, because we don't want to penalize people that did mint all of their horses. So there's never going to be a solution that makes kind of everybody happy. But again, I think the other alternative, if we didn't go this route, would have been to reveal all the horses and put them up on OpenSea. So I think you probably ended up in a better spot anyway, and long term for sure. So it's just it's a short term, long term game.
For sure, and I'm definitely here for the long term. This decision you mentioned, putting the horses up on OpenSeas, which I thought was what the direction you were going to go in January. Was this decision also made because we were thinking some people were not minting more horses because they did not have more avatars? Was that a barrier you guys were thinking?
No, it really wasn't. We were just again, I think that we want to have optionality for the existing players. We know that some people, when we did the first auction, we saw that some people really actually preferred buying a revealed horse. But we also know that the chance and that reward, the visceral reward of taking delivery of an unrevealed horse, is something we didn't really want to go away from either. So we're trying to have our cake and eat it too, but we're trying to also provide that same level of optionalities for you guys. So it wasn't so much that people hadn't minted them, because if people don't want to mint off of their avatars, it's an interesting solution, right? Like that was the other struggle that we had. Is like, what are we going to do with these people that haven't minted their pass yet? It seems like a kind of an odd thing to not do. Like in theory, you bought an avatar so that you could get the horse, and then why not do that or sell it at that point? So it leaves us the door open for those people to come around and be able to do it. But it wasn't a consideration. The consideration was solely, it's like, okay, how do we best navigate this to give people the most different options on how they want to take on more horses if they choose to. If you don't choose to, then by all means you don't need to. You already have 40 avatars and 40 horses, right?
Right.
Maybe.
Okay. All right. I'll let someone else ask some questions, and if there's still more time, I still have more, but I don't want to dominate it, so I'll step down.
Looks like we got one in the chat from Alpha Optics. I'm just going to read it to you, Casey, just so we can get on the recording. It just says, wouldn't it a better solution be to get these horses minted with a solution that focuses on bringing in new members? This solution just allows current investors to spend more money. I personally don't see this change bringing in more mints that has changed the original piece of the game theory. So, were any other solutions considered?
Yeah, no, obviously my role as the CMO is I'm very focused on building the community, right? Like, we don't want to just keep selling to you guys. We love you guys, but we've taken enough of your money and investment. We need to kind of build out and bring on a lot more people. The health of the overall project is scaled largely on the number of people that we kind of bring in through the front door. One of the first initiatives that we did when I came on was to do the starter kit. I think we're going to keep up with the starter kit. I think we'll price that more competitively. We're also going to likely lock it down so that it's one per account, which will allow us to get a little bit more aggressive with the pricing to bring that in. We have some other ideas. We obviously don't want to make this game a full free to play game, right? Like, when we look at our competitors in the space, it's the Sorare and Rainmakers. It's the big blockchain fantasy games, and the barrier to entry to those games is literally zero, right? They're on a free-to-play model that they try to graduate people up and through this tier system. I don't think we want to do that. I think we want to make sure that there's a level of elite sophistication, I guess is the way to put it, similar to what exists in the actual real world horse racing world. So I think we want to try to balance that. So was it one of the considerations? Well, if you have a starter kit's going to include a Genesis avatar. Once you have that Genesis avatar, the starter kit will also come with a horse, and now those people can start filling their stable with horses too. So we view this as not contrary to the ability to bring in new users. We have some initiatives that we're going to be rolling out that will also be targeted towards bringing in new users, potentially at a lower price point. But again, that wasn't a consideration for this. We do know that it's a big deal for us to kind of get people in the door and to be transparent. That's blocked right now by our ability to take credit card payments. We've had this back and forth with Venly as our provider. We're working on that. So that's my ability to market this project outside of this core industry or this core group as it is in the Web3 world is completely hindered right now by our ability to take fiat on-ramp and credit cards. So that's something that's super important. It doesn't have anything to do with this. At the end of the day, that's what the starter kit's going to be for, and making sure that we have a seamless way for new users that are not crypto native to come in, be able to buy an avatar and a horse, and start participating in the game.
Come on, guys. You're so active typing warriors. Jeez. I mean, you can't sit there complain about it, and they give this open opportunity to talk about it and no one speaks up. All right, I'll ask some more questions then. Could you take me through how you believe this does increase value in the avatars? Because again, to me, it decreases demand, in my opinion. If I want to mint 40 horses every year, I only need one avatar. I'm probably getting rid of some of these avatars. And I think that increases supply unless we have a huge influx of people, right? If we get 10,000 new people wanting avatars, all right, this isn't an issue, right? Like you said, decreasing those barriers to onboarding, non-crypto people being able to use credit cards and making it easier for them, that's definitely the pathway to that. But till we get this huge influx of people, which we don't have quite yet, how does this increase the value of my avatar? And again, I understand short-term, long-term, and I'm here for the long-term for sure.
Yeah, and in my perspective, that's not a huge increase. I think selling out and having 10,000 Genesis avatar holders is a very low bar. That is peanuts compared to where we expect this project to be. So that's not even necessarily a consideration for us. We're 100%. Like if we're not next year, if we don't have 10,000 Genesis avatar holders when the initial Series 1 sale goes online, and that we're not sold out, I don't expect us to be clear, I don't expect us to be 100% sold out next year on 12/31. I suspect that there's going to be a lot of Genesis avatar holders that are just not paying attention and didn't buy during that window, or choose not to buy an unrevealed horse, or will pick it up afterwards. So there's going to be a handful of this remainder inventory that we have, but there's no way that next year comes around and we don't have 10,000 Genesis avatar holders that are buying it all up. And those 48 avatars that you hold are your ticket to getting 40 unrevealed Series 1 horses next year and the year after that. We just don't think in those terms. It's not like a massive influx of users to have 10,000. When we're looking at our comparisons of other projects that were way behind where we are in our trajectory, in what is a terrible bear market, what is with a ton of technical and regulatory instability that we need to navigate, that didn't exist when those guys were launching their projects, and we're crushing it. It's a slow start. We expect it to be further but there's no question that next year comes around and we're and we're not in a situation where those 40 avatars are your ticket to 40 horses. Because if you don't have those 40, there's no way you're going to have one avatar and be able to buy 40 unrevealed horses next year. It's just not going to happen. Or we've failed miserably, and that's the least of our concerns. That's our perspective on it.
Yeah, I think that's probably where I have the biggest issue with it is I don't mind this policy, but I feel like it was done before we have the numbers to justify it, if that makes sense. Like if we had 10,000 avatar users or even 8,000 different individuals owning an avatar, fine. But the number of users that we have is actually frankly pretty small, and a lot of these users have multiple, like, I know people with over 100 avatars. So I feel like I understand the concept of it, but I'm just struggling, I guess, with why it had to be done this year versus waiting till the numbers were to a point where there is a bottleneck there. I guess that's my struggle. I understand the concept though.
Yeah, well, this year it was the decision between whether to reveal those horses or keep them unrevealed was decision one.
Sure.
The decision one was like, well, let's do both things. Let's give an option for people to purchase unrevealed horses, and then let's do auctions and we'll have revealed horses. So that was the first part of the decision, and then the second part of the decision was, okay, well, who do we allow to buy those unrevealed horses? Do we keep it locked to 1-to-1 of Genesis avatars, or do we open it up for any Genesis avatar now to start buying more of them at this stage? And I guess from our perspective, like that was a benefit to current holders so that they could get more horses. What we want for this year is we want all the horses sold. We want to bring in the horses. We want people watching races, winning money, and getting paid, because we know that that's the tool that helps grow. Once we have this user story of people investing in the project, having their horses race, have those horses race, win money, and then those horses, because they're starting to win money, are appreciating assets. And then the Genesis avatar also starts appreciating assets because it's this virtuous cycle of success. So we want to make sure we get all these horses kind of moved. We wanted to give the ability for you guys to do it. We wanted to create, again, like a solution that will work for next year as well. We could have done that, but then, what happens if we don't? What happens if the first race where one of the yearlings wins and nobody owns that horse? That's a missed opportunity from us. We want to make sure that we're paying you guys. We want to make sure that you guys are winning. So we want to move the horses. So we want to move the horses. We want to bring new people in. We're balancing it between the two.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you 100%. The more horses we can get out to people, the more people start getting excited about this. So I'm with you 100% on that. I just didn't think the Genesis avatar was the barrier to that. I don't know that this will change much for this year, but I certainly understand in the long term, when we have 10,000, whatever, 15,000, 20,000 users, this is a great policy and that's fine. I just didn't know if it was needed right now, and I think it devalued the assets that I had. But again, I'm in this for the long term. You guys are looking at it long term, which is good. I want leadership to look at this stuff long term, and even if there's short term pain, then we just have to deal with that.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, I appreciate the support and the understanding on it. It's navigating uncertain times for sure. So trying to create rules when the world is constantly kind of changing underneath our feet is a little bit of a challenge.
For sure. And I like revealing all the horses and having them sit on open season. Hey, if that horse wins something, boom, people are getting that. Even if you raise the price on that horse after it wins something. I like that idea with horses just sitting there, and someone sees that horse at their local track or something, that causes them to purchase it because it's available. I'm okay with that for this year.
Okay, yeah, and I think we're going to have a balance of that. What we probably like to get feedback on is what should that balance be? As in, how active should we be in the horse auctions? When a horse doesn't sell at auction, I presume that following that model, we should just leave it up on OpenSea and see if it sells. Just put it at a price point that makes sense, so that they kind of out there and exist, and rather than kind of taking them back in and putting them back into circulation. So we can, we talked about increasing auctions and doing like 50 horses at a time. I think that might be a little aggressive, because I like the way that we did it last time. I like that we, had the time for Nick to kind of go in and do a little bit about each one of the horses, so we can have create this dialogue around, because all of these horses have potential, right? Like every one of them has a potential to be great. It's just kind of the perspective and the lens that you're looking at it and the value that you're seeing in it. So we'll probably figure out a balance of what the right number of horses to put on auction, and what to do with those horses after auction.
So that sounds good. Makes sense. And I like the 50 horse, but obviously defer to whatever you guys decide. Okay, last question, and then I'll step down off here. Last question. As far as making these decisions, I know you guys are going at a blinding speed and there's thousands of things we're not seeing. And sometimes you don't have time to get some feedback from the community. But I know in the past they had kind of like little councils or little groups that they could bounce ideas off of, just to kind of see what the reaction would be, seeing if there need to be changes to that. Is that something that we'll continue to implement in Silks? Or is that something that's kind of we did in the past but not going to do going forward?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's it's always a delicate thing. Like I said, I've been making games for a long time, and it's always this balance of there's no way that for us we can't let you guys know everything that we're working on, because we don't again want to come through and have we want to under promise and over deliver, so we don't want to talk about everything that we're doing. And then without having that perspective on kind of where we're going, it's hard to have the right input to help us make decisions. All of that said, in this particular, I think that there are some things that we're working on that where this decision will make more sense in the future too. But that was one of the early comments, was like, oh yeah, why didn't this go into game theory committee? Which is a valid point. And I took that as a note. And again, like I jumped into the fire 2.5-3 months ago, whatever it was. And I love it. And it's absolutely great. And I'm a firefighter by nature, and I love the chaos. But that is one of the things we need to do better about, is around the communication, around taking that input, because you guys have perspective that we don't have, and that we can't have, because we're too close. So we'll do a better job of that in the future for sure.
Well, I appreciate your candor and definitely appreciate all the work that you've done and just coming in and giving it everything. So I really appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Oh, it's going well. I echo what Derek just said, but I think I have a question more of clarity, because I haven't really heard it, but what I read from the announcement yesterday was the first paragraph is where people, at least where I stopped, and then I went back and I dug in deeper. My clarification question is that this temporary suspension of one avatar, one horse is only for the end of this year. Next year, it'll be reinstated the way it was before. Or am I missing the boat on that?
So the idea is that every year the major auctions kind of kick off, and that's when we start getting our first information on this year's crop of yearlings, right? So those will get entered into the Silk system, and we'll have a period of closed off sale where it is a 1-to-1 ratio, as in if there's 10,000 Genesis avatars that are in the market, and we presume next year that there will, each one of those is going to have an opportunity to buy an unrevealed Series 1 racehorse for that year. There's going to be 10,000 in that collection. There's going to be a 1-to-1 ratio to do that. If somebody decides not to make their purchase or not to mint their pass, there's going to be a remainder of horses. And on 12/31 of next year, those remainder of horses will be able to be bought by the rest of the Genesis Avatar holders. So we remove
Thank you. Yeah, that's the way I read it, but I felt like a lot of people were not reading on. They saw the first paragraph and stopped. And so that would still maintain the value of our avatars, because we will still have access to the cream of the crop before they're kind of let into the wild.
That's right. Correct. Absolutely.
Thank you for clarifying. That's all.
Yep.
It's going even better now that I knew how to unmute my mic. Apologies if some of this has been covered. I've been working and had to mute for a little bit. Because OpenSea is honestly quite horrific to try and get a lot of data from if you don't have an API key. For context, how many avatars are actually have been minted, and of that number, what percentage of those have gone on to use their delivery pass? I only ask this for context for another question.
Oh, that's a question that I don't have a ready-made answer to. But I can definitely add it into the AMA next week. But if it's context for your next question, I'm not sure how I can.
Yeah, like let's just imagine that, I don't know, let's just make up a number. Let's say it's 5,000. Like I have no
Yep.
idea if that's true or not, but let's say it's 5,000. And let's say that we know that of that 5,000, 80% of those users have used the delivery pass. Would that not argue the point that instead of going from a drip of a 1-to-1 ratio to a fire hose with unlimited, that perhaps another alternative to kind of allay the fears of, the short term, because obviously this comes down fundamentally to whether you're a short term, believer in the project or long term. For the record, I'm a longer term guy. So that being said, is it possible that some middle ground could have been reached if we just rely on what some of the data is telling us? Because if the ratio is rather high, then maybe unlimited isn't really what's necessary, and it would alleviate people that own 40 avatars from feeling like they can dump a whole bunch.
Yeah, well, okay. So the concern there, because I kept seeing that kind of as a talking point that kept surfacing in Discord of, unlimited horses. I mean, it's obviously a limited number of horses. It's a very finite number of horses that are in the pool. But what you're saying is that the similar situation of what Derek was saying, he bought 40 so he could mint 40. If we said, hey, now you can all mint one more for each one of the avatars that you have, that could have been a middle ground that could have potentially worked and kept some of the, well, at least now I got 80. That would have been that is an interesting middle ground solution. I think that I don't think that we put that perspective on it. I think it was more, let's find a solution that will work well for the following years. But that's an interesting idea. We can consider that. I'm not sure if that becomes a technical solution that we can implement, but I think it's a valid feedback that does make sense.
Gotcha. And one additional question is the catalog. I guess like right now it stood at, I don't know, 7,500 or somewhere thereabouts, and the intent is to have the Series 1 catalog expanded to 10,000. Is that the goal for future years? And I ask because, the full crop in North America was like about 19,000, I think, last year, and that's if we include Canada and Puerto Rico and a couple of oddball spots. I think it was like 17K in North America. Is the intent to just stay at 10,000? Or is there plans to expand? And I guess I ask because it speaks to whether we can actually sell out the entire series, but then also what is the value of said series, given that, a lot of foals are worthless. They don't make the races, or if they do make the races, they earn, 0.
Yeah, no, that's a very fundamental piece of this project. I think that you're getting at, and I think it's an important distinction for us. So yes, the plan is to always to hit 10,000 for each one of those. We also respect that a lot of the best horses aren't sold at auction and that are going to come in kind of later. How much do we want to curate that list? Because as I'd mentioned earlier, it's in the project's best interest, the player's best interest, and our best interest to make sure that the horses that we have that we're selling are the best horses. We want them all to race. That'd be amazing if we could. We can't, unfortunately, predict which ones are going to race and which ones aren't. I think it's part of the nature of the risk associated with it. And that's risk that's also inherent into competing projects that are similar to ours. And you buy a Sorare card of a amazing soccer player that ends up tearing his ACL and doesn't play in that year. There's elements to that. So I think it's part of that. So we do want to make sure that we're filling out the 10,000 Series 1 horses with the best of the best that we can in a way that we can. And for sure, some 7,500 of that is easy because it comes in and through Keeneland and Fasig-Tipton, and we have the data on those. So the intention is to fill out the other 2,500. We're getting in the process of doing some big deals around the data necessary to be able to run and provide all of the infrastructure for the game, and some of that includes getting access to data on horses. So as we get data on additional horses, we'll continue adding to the pool. So there is more horses that are coming, but that also goes back to the value of being able to mint early, right? Because a lot of the best horses have already been selected, and that'll be the case each year.
Cool. And just lastly, I'll echo the earlier sentiments, and I'm sure you're already getting the feeling, and you spoke to it earlier, is the value of communication, during this time, especially when, we're in year zero essentially, and we have months and months and months to wait. So, now more than ever, being able to communicate timely and civilly and, somewhat transparently goes a very long way, I think, at least with myself. But I think it probably goes a long way with others as well, even if it's not necessarily the news that they want to hear or they don't agree.
Yeah, no, and
So,
that's
thank you.
that's the intention behind the quarterly review too. It's been an amazing testament to Ben and Squid being able to maintain a community while there isn't a lot of activity and action. Like, we're all just kind of in this waiting game. And you guys waited a long time to get the horses, and now we're waiting again a bit of time to get the land, and then we're going to be waiting again for a little bit of time before the races start. Once the races start, everything changes, right? So for sure, the communication now, it'll help us make better decisions and gear ourselves up for scaling. But again, we're going to scale. Like, that's a given. We just have to, one hurdle at a time. But communicating with you guys to make better decisions is, I'm making it a point for me to do it, because it's in my purview to be able to do that, and hopefully we'll start doing a better job of it. And I think the AMA next week will go a long way towards that. Mhm.
Hey, Ben, thank you. Thanks. Going well. Thank you, Casey. Thanks for pulling this together quickly to address this up front with the team and the community. I have two. Now that Ben, you just said that, I'll make it one connected question then. There's been a lot of focus around the avatar and the value of the avatar. And I guess I'm of the camp, and I'm speculative here. So I'm of the camp that when you look at this decision independently of anything else, yes, you could argue that the value of the avatar has been diminished or could be diminished. But holistically, the avatar becomes a tool that the Game of Silks has that you can leverage to create any kind of value that you want. And we've already seen evidence of that with land being given as an airdrop, with the OG 5K reward that's yet to be delivered. And who's to say, and Casey, if you'd like to comment on this, I'd love to hear this, that rewards for having a Genesis avatar will continue throughout the life of the project. Now, you're not going to tell us what those rewards are, when they're going to come, or even if they're ever going to come. But to me, when Derek says I have 40 avatars and I may want to dump some of them, it gives me heartburn, because is he potentially throwing away future rewards, because the avatar has so much ability for you as a leadership to leverage for rewards opportunities overall. The horse is a horse, the land is a land, you're stuck with those, but the avatar can be anything that you guys want it to be. And I'm wondering, can you comment on the speculative nature of having an Genesis avatar specifically, independent of today's decision? That's my first question. Then to respect what Ben just asked, my second is simply a function of, could we do this in a rolling fashion when we're looking at pricing out future releases? So, if you have a Genesis avatar, the 1-to-1, if you do it in the first 30 days, it's $500. If you do it over the next 90 days, it's $750. But as an example, once you open up the floodgates and say anybody has an avatar can buy as many horses as you want, there's a risk reward to that. If you wait to that point, it's going to cost you more money to buy all those horses. And oh, by the way, you potentially have a smaller pool of quality horses to pull from, because the individuals that have the avatars that bought early not only were able to be given a lower amount to purchase, but they also were able to pick from the entire population that was available to them. Thanks, Casey.
No problem. Yeah, that was 2 short questions. Yeah, so first question, absolutely. We view, the way that I've been thinking about Genesis avatars and Genesis avatar holders. I said it before, but your guys are the market makers. The equivalent in the horse racing world would be that you guys are the breeders, right? You guys are taking horses and you're getting first crack at them, and you get to decide how those horses get treated inside the game of Silks for that season and for the lifetime of that horse. Which is hugely valuable. But you do raise another good point. Okay, well, what does it mean to have an avatar? We have a lot of thoughts around ways that we can kind of leverage a lot of that. In that, because we're bridging the gap between kind of what a blockchain fantasy game would be, as well as kind of this NFT Web3 project, gives us a bunch of room to play with. Lots of room to play with on how we handle different things that are cosmetic and represented in the metaverse, how things that we can have that have additional utility. There's a bunch of different things and I agree, because the original idea and the concept of an avatar was that it was your silks and it was your identity inside the game. It wasn't meant to be a collection mechanic where you're collecting 40 of them. So it became this other kind of thing, which I think we've done a good job of adding additional utility to it. But at the end of the day, your avatar is meant to represent your silks of the dynasty that you're building inside the game. So there's a lot of things that we can kind of do with that. But there's a lot of things that we can do for people that have multiple avatars as well. So we have a lot of different ideas on how to make those things happen. On the second question around pricing theory is a really interesting thing, right? So if we rolled it out so that the pricing was cheaper and then increased, we'd find ourselves in a situation like we are now, where the barrier to entry only got worse. It got harder for people to kind of get into. I think that we can bypass some of that, because we're saying, okay, with specifically around Genesis holders, but then again, it's like, why do we need to incentivize them when next year this all goes away because we have 10,000 holders and the 99% of the market's going to be sold before the 31st, and there's that tied 1-to-1 ratio, so everybody gets one. So I think that it would have been an interesting solution for us to do this year, and not so helpful necessarily right now in the situation that we're in. The situation we're in now is like, okay, we want to figure out how to keep you guys enthused and involved, provide additional utility for your loyalty of coming in early onto the project and having faith in us. But we also need to figure out a way that we can onboard and grow the community substantially over the next 3 to 4 months. So we're trying to juggle both of those things. But I do like the idea of the competitive pricing. We'll figure out, we're going to stand true and make sure that we're always looking for ways that we can add value to the Genesis holders. It's almost like we're going to have two different fundamental games that are being played. We're going to have the Genesis avatar holders playing one game with the Series 1 horses and figuring out what they want to do with them, and then everybody else coming in. So I go back, and some of you are gamers, some of you aren't, but I started in MMORPGs, and there was always this sense of this early game and then there's the late game. And you're trying to get these early game players to graduate into the late game, because that's where the fun really starts. You guys are coming in at the late game. We need to figure out how the early game's going to work. But we're thinking about it as almost like there's 2 separate perspectives and experiences that can be had within the game.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Great. How are you guys doing? Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Awesome. So my question is basically, what do you see as the incentive financially to mint a horse, as opposed and sort of ending up with a random NFT, as opposed to selectively choosing on OpenSea or the marketplace the game will eventually have to pick a higher probability chance that you have a winning horse in the long run. I have had a hard time understanding and seeing that incentive so far, and I've only been here a brief while, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I think that I was getting at that a little bit. I think there's different strokes for different folks on this one. I think some people very much want to be able to find a great horse and buy it, and that are willing to pay the market price to have a great horse. And then other people are like, they want to have that experience of paying a flat fee and being able to get a horse that would have sold for 2 to 3 ETH in the open market. So I think there's a balance between the two. I think that this next phase that we're going into in the next few days will open that door, so it will give people the option of being able to participate in either way that they want to. We noticed it. We were like, wow, some people are actually valuing revealed horses more than unrevealed, and I think that was a little bit of a surprise to us. We were under the impression, and most games that operate in this space do so in kind of this blind system of randomness. So I think that that's an interesting take, and I think that we'll try to support both in the best way that we can. But in future seasons, yes, it'll be unrevealed, because one of the ideas that was behind the project too, and Troy's spoken to this a few times, is that in the real world of horse racing, the people that have the deepest pockets are going to buy all the best horses, and they're going to kind of run that market. We wanted to find a way that we could potentially democratize that a little bit. For sure, there's still obviously a pretty hefty barrier to entry into the project, but we didn't want to have just the people with the deepest, pools of ETH kind of coming in and owning all the best horses and running up the prices on the secondary market. We wanted to give an opportunity for everybody to come in and potentially get the next great horse. So we're trying to do both things, really.
The other thing too, to kind of piggyback on that, Casey, is if you look at horse racing, if everyone knew in the yearling year when these horses are yearlings, which ones were going to make the races and which one was going to win the Kentucky Derby, and these horse experts knew exactly what horse, the horse racing game wouldn't be fun. But as you could go and just search Kentucky Derby winners and see what they sold for an auction compared to other horses that sold at the same sale that year, and you'll find comparisons that some of the horses that won the Derby in the past 10 years, didn't sell for over 25K. And then you could go see, but these horses are also selling in the big sales, so you kind of go, look, it's fun revealing a horse, and it is, you do take a risk, but at the same time, people going on OpenSea and spending, a couple $1,000s on horses right now, maybe they could have just did a 750 reveal and had a better shot of getting a random horse that was going to make the races, because at the end of the day, you really don't know until the horses start racing where they're going to turn up.
Hello. So I have a quick question. Give me one moment. No, I don't. Oh, really? Yeah. Okay, so my question is, I still have 2 avatars that have not been minted, and I was wondering, these avatars that haven't been minted, will that be included in the plan you guys are trying to do? Because I was thinking, obviously you guys are the brains of the operation, and you know what's best for the long term, and I'm here for this for long term. Obviously, I decided to invest into the first NFT I decided to invest in was your NFT project, mostly because I saw that there was real value in this. It wasn't just all bullish and also everyone just trying to hype up an NFT. I was thinking that maybe that an idea, obviously this might not be something you guys would do, but just an idea to put out, people that still own these avatars that haven't been minted. If people want to buy that in the open market, right? If they decide to go through that route, maybe they could get mint a horse with a mint pass that is on that avatar, get a horse for cheaper rather than if you already own an avatar and you already minted through your own mint pass, right? Maybe it would cost more to get another horse. And I just wanted to see if, one, how would that affect the mint pass that is already on my avatar, and and if that is a possibility that could happen.
Sure. I think you're breaking up a little bit, but I think I can get a general idea that maybe if you didn't mint using your mint pass before the deadline, that would somehow give you a discount to be able to mint now. The 12/31 mint deadline was pretty well communicated. I think that's something that we did fairly well. So the intention of basically the presumption that I think everyone had before would be that those mint passes were going to be cleared off of all of those avatars because you didn't use it during the window, and then the remaining horses would go get revealed and get listed. So I think that the intention still is that we're going to take those mint passes off because they don't have utility anymore. The intention was that those give people access to one during the sales period, and that sales period is going to end in 3 days. So you can still use it. And maybe some people are waiting until the very end to use it, and maybe we'll see some people that end up using them now. But you don't need to because we're going to be able to buy delivery passes for the same price. I would be reluctant to reward people for waiting. Kind of what Dragon Hot Dog was saying. It was like, actually, we want to reward people for using them earlier, not for waiting until the end. So I wouldn't want to be like, oh, I should have waited to mint mine because now I could have gotten it for cheaper, which is a struggle that we have generally when it comes to pricing all around. We're able to do the Black Friday sale. I think that went very well. But for us to be able to lower prices and not have people feel like they should have waited to buy their horses because they were going to get cheaper. There's always that balance that we have to address. So we're trying to figure out and navigate that. I saw a lot of people putting into Discord that we should just be lowering the prices overall in general, and that's something that we'll take into account. I'd love to get more feedback from you guys on we want to open the door and let more people in, but we also don't want to devalue you guys and that you guys had bought at a higher rate. So we're trying to balance that with what I had mentioned about the new plans around the starter kit. But I don't see us giving a discount or added benefit for people that didn't use their mint passes to date.
Yeah, I understand. I understand that. That's not exactly what I was saying. I was saying like for people that want to sell off their avatar, right, with that have a mint pass, right. Maybe there's some people that already own avatars that are already minted, right, but they want to buy more horses. What I was trying to say is that maybe they could buy the avatar someone's trying to sell off that has that mint pass, right? And since they bought an avatar with a mint pass, let's, for example, when at the beginning of the horse minting, right, the first 3 days it was $500, right, and then it was bumped up to $750.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is like if you want to buy a new horse, but you don't have an avatar with that mint pass, right? You're gonna pay the $750. But if you buy a new avatar with a mint pass, it'll be $500. It's kind of like what I would say is incentivizing people to actually buy these avatars, right? Whether it be from the open market or actually minting an avatar.
And that's what the starter kit is, for us to sell them as a package, which would essentially that's what it would be.
Okay.
Okay. So, and then as supporting the secondary market for avatars, just again for transparency, we view the secondary market as directly competitive with our primary sales, right? Either you can buy an avatar from us at Silks and we collect 100% of the revenue to put it back into the project, or you're buying it on the secondary market, and it's going back into the community, and it might trickle back into our wallet eventually anyway through alternative sales. But fundamentally, we view the secondary market as price competitive with what we're trying to do until we sell out. And once we sell out, then then it becomes the secondary market, and the market moves into the first party, and we have it through the portal. But yeah, I don't think we'd be super incentivized to drive secondary market avatar sales.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry to jump in late. I know you'd already said last call, but I was out and about. I was out and about in the community, and it was pretty loud, so I want to try to get home before it ended. Appreciate the time. Casey, could you explain what success looks like moving forward from this decision? What you guys will define as success with this decision?
Specifically around this decision, well, part of the success was that we thought the community would actually like it, because we thought we were adding a bunch of utility to it. So I think what success for us is doing a better job of when we make a decision to have that be communicated and clear. I think that there should be sources of truth relative to the project. I think that the gameplay documents and the white paper need an update. We're going to do a pass on those. So when there are questions about how things stand, we're beholden to that point of truth, and there's less ambiguity around the project. So to some degree, I think this decision was around kind of removing ambiguity and saying this is what this project is about, and this is how we're doing it. So I view success in this case of being that we add additional kind of utility and plan around Genesis avatars going forward, that allows you guys to kind of go in and buy additional horses if you guys so choose to do so, without having to have the added investment of buying new avatars. In a perfect world, I would love this project to have one Genesis avatar per person. I think that's the intention behind the Silks. That said, I respect that as I had mentioned earlier, a Genesis avatar is an overall investment in the long-term viability of the project. They're going to increase in value. That value is only realized when you guys actually sell them to other people. So eventually, maybe we'll get to that point where it's one-to-one. But that's kind of the intention behind it, is to figure out a way to create a system that's transparent, that feels logical, that works this year, to provide value to move horses, to add value to move additional Genesis avatars. So when somebody comes in and buys a starter kit, they can buy a starter kit and then go on and buy 2-3 more horses. And then for them to be able to do that, I want all the horses sold before race season starts. I want all the Genesis avatars sold before next season. But I think that'll take care of itself this season. So those are the goals for this decision. We need to move horses. We need to get Genesis avatars moved, and we need to have a rule in place that spans the fluidity of this season, and it works well with the intention behind all of this for next season.
All right. Well, I'll just speak for the community from what you read today. Nobody believes removing the barrier of an avatar was the issue for not selling out more avatars or more horses. I understand that that's where the project has decided to go, and think that's the one barrier. We'll see how it plays out, but I appreciate the honesty, and we all want the project to sell out. We're all on the same team here.
Yeah.
Just seems like a weird choice to sell avatars and horses by removing an avatar barrier. And I'll check out with that one. I appreciate you guys' hard work. Especially appreciate you guys taking all the questions.
Yeah, no problem. And I'll address a little bit of that, because I also don't think that this was a decision that was made in a vacuum. It was a decision between either revealing all the horses and listing them, or keeping some of them unrevealed, and then how do we sell them? And if we're going to sell them, do we keep it with a tied to 1-to-1 ratio? So anybody that wants to buy one of those needs to buy an avatar, or do we open it up? So I think there's two decisions that were made there. I think that the intention is, again, that I think it's a balance between those things. I did, to be honest, I like the idea of potentially limiting it, and saying, okay, well, maybe we allow Genesis avatars to buy an extra from the remaining pool after the sales period is over. That's actually a really interesting idea that might strike a balance between the two. So I do want to make sure that you guys know that we're listening. We're going to figure out a solution that works for everybody. No, thanks, guys. Yep, appreciate the feedback. Thank you, guys.